The call for help. The stars above Earth were peaceful. For thousands of years, humanity had lived in a quiet corner of the galaxy, largely ignored by the advanced civilizations that surrounded them. Earth was considered insignificant, a small, peaceful planet that posed no threat. The human race had always been underestimated by the galactic powers. They were seen as fragile, their technologies primitive compared to the great empires of the galaxy. But all of that was about to change. One cold, dark night, a faint signal pierced the silence of space. It was a distress call, a message sent in desperation from a distant world. The message was simple, but the fear in it was undeniable. The people of this distant planet were under attack, their cities destroyed, their hopes shattered. The message was clear: we need help, or we will perish. Across the galaxy, advanced civilizations received the message. The first reaction was laughter. Why would anyone think that humanity, a small and primitive race, could help? Earth had no great fleets, no advanced weapons or technology. The other races had long dismissed humanity as nothing more than a peaceful species that would never cause trouble. They thought Earth was just a place for research, not for war. The idea that humanity could do anything of significance was laughable. But this cry for help, this desperate plea, began to stir something deep inside Earth's leaders. For generations, Earth had been on the sidelines, watching as the rest of the galaxy fought wars and expanded empires. Humans had never been involved in such conflicts. They had focused on survival, on building a peaceful world. But now, the cry of desperation from a fellow world shattered that peace. For the first time, Earth had to make a choice: stay hidden or step up and fight for something greater than themselves. At first, most of Earth's governments debated the response. They were hesitant. Was it their place to get involved in such a distant conflict? Should they send help to a world they knew nothing about? But as the message was replayed over and over, something stirred in the hearts of Earth's leaders. The words of the distress signal were simple, but they resonated with humanity's long-held beliefs of justice and compassion. We need help, or we will perish. These words were a call to action. It wasn't just about one planet anymore. It was about humanity's chance to prove itself, to show that it could stand with the great powers of the galaxy. For once, Earth had something to fight for. As the debate continued, an unlikely ally began to emerge: Earth's military. The leaders of the world's defense forces had been quietly working for years, developing technology that the rest of the galaxy had no knowledge of. They had built ships, weapons, and systems of defense that were not seen by the rest of the universe. The technology was based on humanity's ingenuity, their ability to adapt and build from nothing. What other civilizations had forgotten, humanity had embraced: creativity, resilience, and determination. The first meeting was tense. Leaders from around the world gathered to discuss the situation. There was no time for hesitation. The decision was clear. Humanity had to act. The fleet that had been hidden for so long would now be mobilized. Earth was not defenseless, and the galaxy was about to learn this the hard way. The news spread quickly, but not everyone believed it. Alien civilizations still laughed at the idea. They thought Earth's military was outdated, that humanity was too small and too weak to make a difference in the galactic scale of things. They believed that Earth had no chance against their vast fleets and advanced technology. The enemy's superiority was clear to everyone but Earth. But humanity had one thing the rest of the galaxy didn't: a determination to survive, to fight for what was right. Earth wasn't about to let a desperate cry for help go unanswered. The technology they had developed, the hidden fleet that had been built in secret for years, was ready to unleash its fury. It wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about humanity proving that they would never be ignored again. As the fleet began to take shape, Earth's people held their breath. The launch of the ships was not a time for celebration, but a moment of quiet determination. The fleet would have to cross galaxies, face threats from powerful enemies, and navigate the unknown dangers of space. But there was no turning back. Humanity was ready to fight, to do whatever it took to protect the innocent and answer the call for help. The ships that left Earth were not just military vessels. They were symbols of everything humanity stood for: resilience, strength, and the unbreakable spirit to rise above any challenge. The quiet, unsuspecting Earth that had once been written off as weak was about to make its mark on the galaxy in a way no one had ever imagined. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the enemies who had been laughing at Earth's weakness were now beginning to wonder what was coming from this small, insignificant world. Could humanity truly stand up to the might of the Galactic Empire? And if so, what would that mean for the rest of the galaxy? As the first ships broke through Earth's atmosphere and headed toward the distant stars, the galaxy waited in suspense. Humanity had answered the call for help, and now they were about to show the universe what they were made of. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before, and the truth was, they would never see the universe the same way again. The universe was about to learn that underestimating humanity was a mistake, one that they would soon regret. As the vast ships of Earth's fleet soared through the blackness of space, a quiet anticipation settled over the planet. People across Earth watched with bated breath, their eyes glued to screens, waiting for what was to come. For centuries, Earth had been a silent player in the cosmic game of empires, but now, everything was about to change. The first human ships to leave Earth were more than just vessels. They were symbols of humanity's resilience, of a species determined to prove that they could stand up to the galaxy's greatest powers. The ships didn't just carry weapons. They carried the hopes and dreams of an entire species. On Earth's surface, the atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. People gathered in small groups, their faces drawn with worry, but also with pride. The decision to mobilize had not been easy. Earth's leaders had been hesitant at first. What if they failed? What if their technology wasn't enough to face the formidable enemies who had long dismissed them as insignificant? But once the ships were launched, there was no turning back. The fleet was on its way, and the mission was set: to answer the call for help and to show the galaxy that Earth would no longer stand idly by. As the ships flew further from Earth, their journey was far from easy. They encountered nothing but the vast, empty expanse of space. There were no enemy ships, no massive battleships lurking in the shadows, just an endless sea of stars. The silence of space was deafening. But that silence wasn't going to last long. Everyone knew the journey ahead would be filled with danger, and Earth's fleet had to be ready for whatever came their way. For now, they sailed through space with little more than the stars to guide them, but the quiet was a lie. It was a calm before a storm that no one was prepared for. Deep within the command centers of Earth's ships, the crew members were focused and prepared. They knew the mission they had been given. They were more than just soldiers. They were the first humans to venture out in defense of another world, to step into the unknown with courage and resolve. Many of them had trained their whole lives for a moment like this, but the reality of the situation was beginning to sink in. No amount of training could prepare them for the true scale of what they were about to face. The stakes were higher than anyone had anticipated. The human fleet had been carefully crafted, using technology that was a blend of innovation, necessity, and a deep understanding of their own limitations. Unlike the vast fleets of the galactic empires, Earth's ships weren't meant to intimidate. They weren't enormous, imposing weapons of destruction. Instead, they were smaller, faster, and more adaptable, designed to outmaneuver their enemies and use their agility to their advantage. The ships weren't built to dominate. They were built to survive. Earth's defense systems were designed with this in mind, built by people who had always had to make do with less, but had never stopped dreaming of more. The human fleet had two primary objectives: to reach the planet that had sent out the desperate cry for help, and to face whatever enemies were attacking it. But as the ships traveled further from Earth, the sense of unease grew. What if the galactic empires had already wiped out the planet's defenders? What if humanity was walking into a trap, something far worse than they could imagine? The unknown stretched out before them like a vast chasm, and there was no telling what they would encounter once they arrived. Back on Earth, the tension was palpable. Families huddled together, waiting for news. The media broadcast every moment. But no one knew what would happen next. The government had declared a state of emergency, but for most, it felt more like a moment of silent reflection. This wasn't just another war. This was humanity's chance to prove itself. In their hearts, people knew that what happened in the coming days would change everything. But there was also a sense of unity. For the first time in a long time, humanity was no longer just a collection of nations and borders. They were a single species, united under one purpose. The sense of connection was profound. As Earth's fleet continued its journey, the quiet anticipation was broken by the first signs of trouble. A scout ship, a small reconnaissance vessel, was the first to make contact with the enemy. It wasn't much, just a brief signal picked up by Earth's fleet, but it was enough to confirm that they weren't alone out there. The enemy was near, and it wasn't going to be a friendly encounter. For the first time, the reality of the situation began to hit home. The universe wasn't just a place of exploration. It was also a place of danger. The crew members of Earth's ships braced themselves. They were prepared for the worst, but nothing could have fully prepared them for the sight that lay ahead. As they approached the planet, they saw the true scale of the destruction. Cities had been reduced to rubble. The once thriving world was now a shadow of its former self, with only a few pockets of resistance left to hold on. The aliens who had attacked had shown no mercy, and humanity was about to take its first steps into the fight of their lives. But humanity's strength wasn't in their size or their fleet. It was in their spirit. They weren't going to retreat. They weren't going to be cowed by fear. The defiance they had shown in the face of ridicule, the defiance they had shown when the galaxy laughed at them, was now their greatest weapon. Humanity had always been underestimated, but they were ready to show the galaxy that they were wrong. The ships moved closer, and the sense of purpose grew stronger. Earth's people were no longer just hoping for victory. They were determined to win, to protect the innocent, and to prove that they would never be underestimated again. The calm before the storm was over. Now, humanity was ready to face whatever came next. They were no longer just defenders of Earth. They were defenders of the galaxy. And the universe was about to learn the true power of humanity. The silence of space was broken as Earth's fleet approached the distant planet that had sent out the desperate cry for help. The hum of the engines, once a comforting sound, now felt unsettling. The vastness of space seemed to stretch on endlessly, with no sign of civilization in sight. The calm that had descended on the fleet for days was now shattered, replaced by an undercurrent of fear and determination. The fleet's mission had never felt more real. The ships were still a long way from the planet's surface, yet they had already begun to pick up troubling signals. An enemy force had been detected, large, imposing, and relentless. The scouts had confirmed the worst. The invaders were unlike any force humanity had encountered before. Their ships were enormous, designed for overwhelming firepower and sheer intimidation. They had the technology, the weaponry, and the numbers to annihilate anything in their path. But they didn't have one thing: the unbreakable resolve of humanity. The Earth fleet commanders, huddled in the strategic war rooms of their ships, exchanged nervous glances. No one knew for certain what the aliens wanted or why they had decided to invade this world. The galaxy had been at peace for thousands of years, with only the occasional skirmish between distant empires. But this was different. The cries for help from the planet they had sworn to protect spoke of a level of destruction far beyond anything imaginable. Cities burned. Civilizations crumbled. The aliens had left nothing but ruin in their wake. Earth had answered the call. The fleet's mission was simple: stop the alien invasion and protect the defenseless planet. But the alien armada was vast, its ships stretching across the heavens like a wall of iron. The humans had no illusions about their own fleet's size. They were outmatched and outgunned. Yet, in their hearts, they knew something that the invaders didn't. Humanity had survived countless obstacles before, and they would survive this one too. The commanders ordered the fleet to slow its approach, carefully plotting each course adjustment as the enemy ships loomed large on the sensors. The quiet tension in the command centers was nearly suffocating. The humans had trained for this moment, had rehearsed their tactics, and drilled in preparation for a battle like no other. But even the best preparations couldn't guarantee success. There were so many unknowns. Would their defenses hold? Would their technology be enough to counter the overwhelming might of the aliens? As the first human ships entered the outer orbit of the planet, the true scale of the enemy's forces became apparent. The alien armada was unlike anything Earth's fleet had seen before. Hundreds of ships, each a massive, menacing fortress of firepower and death. The human fleet, while well-equipped, was small in comparison. But what they lacked in size, they made up for in speed and ingenuity. The Earth fleet's ships were nimble, built to maneuver in ways that the heavy, cumbersome alien ships could not. The first clash was inevitable. The humans launched their first strike, a calculated attack designed to gauge the enemy's strength and reaction. The missiles tore through space, lighting up the darkness like stars falling from the sky. But the enemy wasn't caught off guard. Their shields held firm, deflecting the majority of the human missiles. The return fire was swift and devastating. Energy blasts streaked through space, narrowly missing the Earth ships. The battle had begun. Humanity had never faced anything like this before. The alien ships were unyielding, their firepower overwhelming. Yet, the human fleet was not intimidated. They adjusted their tactics on the fly, using their agility to their advantage. The Earth ships darted and weaved through the barrage of alien fire, narrowly avoiding death with each pass. But the aliens were relentless. They had the firepower. They had the numbers. Yet they lacked one critical thing: the unpredictability of humanity. As the battle raged on, the tension grew. Commanders barked orders, and crew members worked tirelessly to keep their ships in one piece. The enemy was not backing down. Earth's fleet was being pushed to its limits. But in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity fought on. With each passing moment, their desperation grew. The stakes had never been higher. They had to protect the innocent. They had to prove that Earth was not a planet to be trifled with. For the first time in the battle, Earth's fleet achieved a small victory. A direct hit from one of their missiles struck an alien ship's weak point. It exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its massive form disintegrating in the void of space. The human commanders exchanged a brief, relieved glance. It wasn't much, but it was a sign that the aliens could be defeated. The victory was small, but it was enough to spark a flicker of hope in the hearts of Earth's soldiers. They weren't out of the fight yet. Despite the victory, the battle was far from over. The alien fleet retaliated fiercely, sending wave after wave of attacks. Earth's ships maneuvered desperately, staying one step ahead, using every trick they had learned in their years of preparation. The human fleet was being pushed back, but there was something else happening too. As the battle continued, the humans began to realize something that the aliens hadn't counted on. The more the humans fought, the more their resolve grew. They didn't just want to survive. They wanted to win. And that was a dangerous thing. Back on Earth, people watched the battle unfold on screens across the planet. The news networks reported every update, every victory, and every loss. The hope of the entire species rested on the shoulders of these brave men and women who had answered the call to defend not just their planet, but the galaxy itself. The world held its breath, praying for victory, knowing that the outcome of this war would shape the future of all humanity. With every passing moment, the battle escalated. The enemy didn't seem to be slowing down. But the humans weren't going to quit. They had come too far, fought too hard. In the heart of their fleet, the human commanders held firm, confident that if they could just hold on long enough, they would find a way to push the aliens back. But as the enemy ships closed in, humanity's fate hung in the balance. The first steps of the war were being written in the stars. The conflict raged on, and as the battle intensified, humanity's determination grew stronger. The tension in space seemed almost palpable, and every ship in Earth's fleet felt the weight of history pressing down on their shoulders. The fight for survival had only just begun, and no one knew what the final outcome would be. Yet, amidst the chaos, a sense of unity emerged. Each ship, each crew member, fought not just for their own survival, but for something much greater, something that could change the course of the galaxy forever. The alien fleet was vast and formidable, but the humans had something they hadn't counted on: the ability to adapt. The commanders on Earth's ships weren't relying solely on brute force or overwhelming numbers. They were using every ounce of their creativity, every tactic they had learned in the years of peace. Every move in this war was calculated, every action deliberate. Earth's fleet was small, but they had the advantage of surprise. The aliens had underestimated them, believing that the humans were a peaceful species, unprepared for the scale of galactic warfare. As the battle wore on, the situation grew more dire. The human ships were beginning to show signs of wear. Shields flickered under the barrage of alien fire, and engines groaned under the stress of constant evasions. Yet, even in the face of this, Earth's fleet refused to back down. One by one, the humans adapted, finding ways to exploit the alien fleet's weaknesses. It was the humans' ability to learn on the fly that made them so dangerous. On the bridge of the flagship, Commander Rachel Marsden stood, her eyes scanning the holographic displays in front of her. She was calm, but inside, the pressure was building. She knew that every decision she made could be the difference between victory and defeat. The enemy ships were closing in fast, their firepower relentless. The numbers were against them, but there was something else that kept Rachel's resolve strong. She knew her crew, her fleet, and the people they were fighting for. "Status update, Commander," came the voice of her tactical officer, Lieutenant Daniels, breaking through the tense silence. "We're holding, but barely," Rachel replied, her voice steady. "Our shields are down to 50%. We need to buy more time." The tactical officer nodded, his face tight with concern. "Understood. I'll have the crew ready the secondary systems, but we need to take out their flagship if we have any hope of breaking through." Rachel looked out at the battlefield, the flashing lights of lasers and explosions illuminating the void of space. She knew what needed to be done. She turned to Daniels. "Prepare a fleet-wide attack on their flagship. Target their engine core and fire with everything we've got. It's our best chance." As the crew went to work, Rachel felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a military operation. This was humanity's stand, their declaration that they would not be intimidated or conquered. This was about something far more significant than mere survival. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not kneel, no matter the odds. The seconds dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. Every decision, every move, was critical. The humans had to strike hard and fast. It was their only shot. The command went out, and the fleet responded. Hundreds of ships fired simultaneously, their weapons unleashing a furious barrage at the heart of the alien armada. The alien flagship, the largest and most heavily protected vessel, became the focal point of the attack. Energy blasts streaked through the dark expanse of space, connecting with the alien ship's defenses. The impact was immense, shaking the entire structure of the enemy's vessel. It held for a moment, but cracks began to appear in the shields, and the ship's defenses weakened. The battle was far from over, but the humans had finally found a chink in the armor of their enemies. Rachel's heart raced as she watched the results of the attack unfold. The alien flagship was beginning to falter, its massive hull starting to glow from the heat of the energy blasts. But the enemy wasn't giving up. They retaliated fiercely, launching their own counterattacks with precision and brutality. In the midst of the chaos, the human fleet pressed forward, determined to exploit the breach. They maneuvered through the alien barrage with a level of skill and coordination that left their adversaries stunned. Earth's fleet wasn't just fighting back, they were fighting smarter, and the aliens were starting to realize that humanity was not as weak as they had assumed. As the battle continued, the alien forces started to falter. One by one, the smaller ships of their fleet were destroyed, caught in the crossfire of the ongoing battle. The alien flagship, now heavily damaged, continued to fight on, but its power was waning. The humans could feel it. The tide was turning. They had gained the upper hand. Commander Marsden knew that this moment could define the future of the galaxy. This was their chance to cripple the invaders, to strike a blow that would echo throughout the stars. The decision was made. "All ships, focus fire on the enemy flagship," she ordered. "We end this now." The final assault came with a deafening roar. A concentrated volley of energy blasts from Earth's fleet hit the alien flagship in a precise, devastating strike. The ship's defenses couldn't withstand the onslaught, and in a brilliant explosion, the flagship was obliterated. The shockwave from the blast rippled across the battlefield, sending a wave of fear through the remaining alien forces. The loss of their flagship sent shockwaves throughout the entire fleet. Their morale crumbled. With the flagship destroyed, the remaining alien ships began to retreat, realizing they could not win this fight. The humans had struck back in a way the galaxy had never seen before. Earth's fleet stood victorious, the battle having swung in their favor. But Rachel knew that this was just the beginning. The aliens might retreat now, but their defeat would not go unnoticed. The war for humanity's survival was far from over, and the galaxy would soon learn that underestimating humanity was the biggest mistake they could ever make. The dust settled over the battlefield, but the war was far from over. Humanity had just made its first stand, and the result was nothing short of miraculous. The destruction of the alien flagship had sent ripples through the invaders' forces, breaking their resolve and causing them to retreat. However, as Earth's fleet surveyed the wreckage, they knew the enemy would return, angrier and more prepared than ever. This was only the beginning. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread like wildfire. People everywhere watched the battle unfold on their screens, their hearts pounding in unison with the ships in space. Commander Rachel Marsden's face flashed across the screens, her steady and composed demeanor etched into the minds of those who saw her. The world had seen what humanity was capable of, and they had rallied behind their defenders. Governments, military leaders, and civilians alike were united in purpose. No longer did they live in the shadow of peace. Now they understood that peace could only be maintained by the strength of their resolve. The shockwaves of this battle reached every corner of Earth, sparking a global awakening. The fear that had once plagued the minds of the human race gave way to determination. Humanity had struck back, and they were not about to be wiped out without a fight. On the command deck of the flagship, Rachel Marsden stood before the holographic display, her eyes scanning the wreckage of the alien fleet. The victory was significant, but the cost had been high. The enemy forces were far from depleted, and their retreat had not been a surrender but a strategic withdrawal. The aliens would regroup, and they would return stronger than before. "We've gained an edge, but it's not enough," Rachel said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Her officers nodded in agreement. The battle had given humanity a glimpse of the power they were up against, but it also proved that their enemy could be defeated. The key was to stay one step ahead. They had learned something valuable in those brief moments of combat. The aliens were predictable in their arrogance, and they underestimated the humans' ability to adapt. They had counted on Earth's peaceful history, assuming that humanity would falter in the face of war. But the exact opposite had occurred. "Commander," Lieutenant Daniels spoke up, his voice low with concern. "Do you think they'll attack Earth directly next, or will they go after our allies?" Rachel paused, considering the question. The alien fleet had taken significant damage, but they had vast resources. It was possible that Earth was not their primary target at all. They had tried to intimidate humanity, to strike fear into their hearts by destroying their fleet. But Earth had stood tall, and the world had seen that the invaders could bleed just like any other enemy. They'll come for Earth eventually, Rachel replied. But for now, I believe they'll focus on eliminating any remaining pockets of resistance. We need to ensure our allies are safe, and we need to build our forces. The planning for the next phase of the war began immediately. Earth's fleets, once scattered across the planet, were now being consolidated into a unified fighting force. Nations that had once been separated by ideology or politics were now working together, united under the banner of survival. The world understood that the battle for the future was not just a war for resources or power. It was a war for their very existence. As Earth prepared, the alien forces retreated into the dark reaches of space, regrouping and licking their wounds. They had underestimated humanity before, and now they had learned that a single unified planet was not an easy target. In the alien command ships, the leaders exchanged furious words. They had never expected such a fierce defense from a species they had deemed insignificant. The galaxy was vast, and Earth was just a small blue dot in the cosmic expanse. But now, Earth had proven that it could not be ignored. The humans had struck back in a way that no one had anticipated. The galaxy was changing. No longer would humanity be seen as a weak, peaceful species. They had shattered that perception with their defense of their home. It was clear to all who watched the events unfold that humanity had more than enough fight to withstand any force the galaxy could throw at them. But while humanity's victory was celebrated, there was no illusion of complacency. Every person on Earth understood that peace was fragile, and the next battle could come at any time. The rebuilding process was underway, but there was still so much to do. Every ship that had survived the battle needed to be repaired and refitted for the battles that lay ahead. Resources were being mobilized at an unprecedented scale. Earth's allies, recognizing the strength of humanity's resolve, began to rally to their side. Back in the command center, Rachel Marsden stood before a holographic map, her finger tracing the paths of alien ships retreating into the depths of space. A new plan was forming in her mind, one that would not only protect Earth but prepare them for the inevitable counterattack. "The time for defense is over," Rachel said, her voice firm and resolute. "We're taking the fight to them. We will hunt down their fleet and hit them where it hurts. We've shown we can win. Now let's prove we can finish what we started." Her officers exchanged glances. They knew what this meant. Humanity was no longer just a defender in this war. They were going to become the aggressors. And in that moment, Rachel Marsden knew something that she hadn't known before. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to dominate, to prove that they were a force to be reckoned with, not just a planet among the stars, but a power in their own right. The galaxy would tremble at their defiance, and no one would ever underestimate Earth again. The humans were no longer the underdogs in this war. They were the hunters, and the galaxy was their prey. The galaxy would remember the name Earth, and it would remember the sound of humanity's defiant roar.